Good day guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me Nate, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the F-15C and its combat systems in terms of its HUD displays and the DLZ, which is the dynamic launch zone on the HUD, and a little bit about the radar display here in the bottom left. So I was doing the video last week about which plane to buy, the F-15C or the SU-27, and I was talking a little bit about this, and as I touched upon this subject I realized it's actually quite a vast subject, and I was really only giving a vague, very general, very simple idea of how the systems work. So today I've decided to actually go a little bit into it. Now I really wished I had a mouse to just point at things, but I don't have a mouse to point at things in the F-15C, so I'm going to try my best to edit like circles and stuff during the video editing, although I'm not particularly good at editing videos, so I can't promise anything, and I'll just try my best to describe things, and I'll pause as much as I can, although not too much obviously to keep the video flowing. So we're just in an instant action mission in the just the default F-15C. We're going to be going up against some MiG-23s. Although I won't do the full fight, I'll just demonstrate to you how the long-range missiles work. So we've been armed with armed with 120Cs and two 120Cs and two 120Bs. I'm going to be engaging the first bunch with the of MiG-23s with the long-range missiles, and then I'll see how it goes from there. I think they spawn fairly close, and it's a head-on. So first things first, let's get into the visual mode, which I'll pause here. That brings up the weapons system, and turn on the radar by hitting I, and using the keys to move the radar slew the cursor around. I'll lock up something, and let's lock up you. Right, so the first thing you'll see is the fact that we've now got a target box around the target, and the HUD symbology has suddenly become very complicated, and as with the radar here, it's also very complicated. Now, at the moment, it's a target unknown, although quite obviously, using the RWR and a bit of common sense, we know that's a MiG-23. The unknown is written there in the bottom line of that on the radar display. The IFF on the F-15 interrogates it and eventually figures out that it might be MiG-23. Now, what we're really focusing on here is two things. Well, firstly, let's have a look here that we're on STT, which is single target track. So what you've done now is that you've made the F-15's radar focus purely on this one guy. So it's focusing on him, and it's beaming all this telemetry to the missile the whole time. And we've also got some information here. Now, on the bottom left of the HUD, you'll see now A2C, MM, and then that's some information on the bottom on the right hand side as well. I'll explain these information in a second. So A2C means air-to-air missile, and it's and it's of the C variety. So if you had the B missile, it would go A2B. I can't remember what MM was. I think MM is just a type of missile, medium range missile, like AMRAAM, the two M's at the back. And on the right hand side, we have the time to intercept, which is 27 seconds. And on the right hand side now, you get the dynamic launch zone, which is this bar on the right hand side, where it says 40 and then goes all the way down to the bottom. So that is the range. 40 is the range scale, so it gives you this kind of sense of scale. And you can kind of see the target is just about 24 nautical miles away. And that 949 there is the rate of closure, so my speed plus his speed. Also on the bottom right, it gives out to you information because it says H, that is head on. So that's a head on fight. If we're a rear aspect, that would give us T for tail, and if it was moving across our nose, it would be L and R. So that's what that is so far. There's also this circle that's come up, which is called the allowable steering error. I think it's roughly there, words to that effect. What that means is that circle is got a margin of error for the missile to fly. Now, it's worth noting, let me just zoom out so it doesn't give everyone a headache. It's worth remembering this because the missile is not a rocket that goes all the way to the target. The missile will actually run out of fuel roughly, I think, the first half of the way to the target, and it flies the rest of the way using its leftover energy. So, potential energy stored as fuel burns, giving it kinetic energy, and everything else is just loss, which is important. It's basic physics, but it's very important. That is because once the missile gets past a certain range, when the engine shuts off, it then has to use only what's left of it to track towards a target. So often, and this brings me to the next thing, there's a loft queue, which is the solid green circle in the middle there. That is the queue you want in the middle of the circle, and you want target P in the circle. You could in fact fire off the missile outside of the circle. What that would mean is though that the missile is firing at like not efficiently. It's not as efficient as it was in the circle. So everything, because of the fuel limit on the missile and having to travel the whole rest of the way with its whatever's left energy left from the burn, it's all about trying to save as much fuel from the missile and keep it efficient as possible. So it doesn't use energy, doesn't maneuver as much, and it gets to the target. Which leads me to the DLZ. The DLZ, the Dynamic Launch Zone, is that range scale, and it gives you a few thick bars. The bottom bar is the R-min, which is the minimum range for the missile. Above that is what they call the RTR. And the RTR is the range, turn, and run. If you get your target within that small little scale, that means there is almost no chance that target can outrun you. Or outrun the missile, I should say, sorry. Because above that range, it is theoretically possible, if the target turns hard enough and puts enough power, it will be able to outrun the missile. That's the theory. And because of what I just said before about the missile's actual fuel limit and therefore traveling only on inertia, it's worth remembering that the missile ranges given on like Wikipedia, like the famous one that everyone quotes is the Phoenix missile with 160 nautical mile range, and that range is only really at maximum like best conditions, which is our arrow. Our arrow is the aerodynamic maximum launch range of the missile, which I believe is the thin line above the 20. So that is the missile's optimum range, maximum range under the conditions imposed. So that 160 nautical mile range, for example, from the Phoenix missile, assumes no bad weather, no strong winds, target isn't moving, and just really ideal conditions. If the target is the small fighter moving defensively and evasively, it's not going to get that 160 nautical mile range. It's going to be much shorter than that. And I think in some books I read with the Iranian Tomcats, they were discovering that the Phoenix missiles were only really good for about 40 nautical miles, because as soon as stuff starts moving, that missile is going to use up all its energy doing turns and maneuvers. It might be a bit further than 40, but it's definitely not that far. And you can see here, that RTR range, the range where the missile can definitely hit the target before it turns and burns, is probably what, like 8, a bit more than that. There's also another, the other thick bar at near the 20 is the range of probable intercept, and that is the range where the missile is most likely to hit. And so the computer calculates, like, okay, if that target starts turning and burning at a certain range, the missile should still probably hit. Bear in mind the computer doesn't know how much speed the enemy aircraft can gain in a dive or split S or its maximum characteristics, due to wind and stuff. So that's only a rough calculation. So it works out roughly that that's going to hit. So if I had to give it a number, if you fire within that small range bracket at the bottom, you've got about a 95% chance of killing something. There's always a small percent chance the enemy's going to outturn that missile, outmaneuver it by pulling enough G's. But if you launch it roughly where that 20 mark is, you've probably got about a 70% chance of hitting something. Again, assuming chaff flares are maneuvering, he may be able to defeat the missile. So that's that. There's also this is max aero or it's our optimal range. I'm not really sure. That's something that's not really given in the manual. The F-16 in BMS has a much better launch zone indicator. This one is very, very basic, so it's not particularly effective. There's also a change in the HUD once you launch the missile, which I'll give it to you in a moment. So let's quickly get into position to fire this missile. So let's get the loft Q in the middle of the circle. There we go. Now, for the reasons I explained earlier, loft Q is going to probably nose you up above the target, or at least have your body of the aircraft aim up, because you want to fire off the missile at a positive angle of attack, so the missile goes upwards and comes back down, again saving it some energy on the flight out. So what we do is, when to launch the missile now, I think we've got the visors roll out. We've got the if I'm pause, wait for the red light. Yep, and we got fire. Now the red light's an indicator you are good to fire. I think that missile is in good range now. So let's have a quick zoom in and see where the aircraft is. So the aircraft is in the range of probable kill. which is what I call the range probable intercept, the range of probable kill, because that's exactly what it is. That the range you're most likely to kill it, but there's still a chance he could escape. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire off a missile, and we're going to keep an eye out on the bottom left, because there'll be some symbology that will come up in a second.
Bra 325 425 at 16,000.
Now, this is the interesting part. You can see a side one there, the AMRAAM there. It says T-19. Now, in the last video I made, I pointed out to people that the missile actually uses the aircraft's own radar to provide it with telemetry to track, and that is actually the indicator. So right now, it's what they call Husky. And in contrast to the mode Pitbull. So in Husky mode, the aircraft, the F-15C, is feeding telemetry to the missile, and you can see there's 19 seconds worth of it. When that timer reaches zero, when that reaches a certain point, that T will become an M on the bottom left. Let's see.
Overlord on station at bullseye 149 for 35 at 30,000.
2, 1. Now that gives you M. Now, so what happens now is, at that range, the missile's own radar has activated. Now this is the point where the missile is pitbulled, and it uses its own radar to track the target. As you can see, the missile went fairly far, so from where I am now to where the missile is now, throughout that whole range, the missile was using the aircraft's telemetry, information fed by the radar, to track it and guide it roughly to the position the enemy aircraft is in. So how it actually works in reality is that the missile is fired and it doesn't track the aircraft the whole way. This aircraft, the F-15C, is telling it roughly where to end up, and then when it gets to that position, it then tells it to it activates its own radar, and then it tracks it using it. So it's kind of a two-stage thing. So this is really, like I said, an improvement on the AIM-7 Sparrow. It's a huge improvement, but nonetheless, it's not a huge jump in the technological terms. You're still having to help the missile, and you can see it's not a true fire and forget. You can fire it like that, and you can fire off another missile, but you won't be able to guide it as well. So if I switch targets now to another target, you won't be you won't be feeding that missile information to that target. So if I unlock this guy now and I track a target completely over there somewhere, that missile will only go roughly where the target thinks it would be, and it'll turn off its own radar, and that target may not be there. So that's it. That's the kind of the problem. After that, of course, after T becomes M, that gives you time to the impact. So it's got 12 seconds to impact. So let's see how that goes.
Enfield 1-1, Overlord, Bra 320.
You see the missiles going up for the terminal solution. It's going to come back down.
Enfield 1-1, Overlord,
it's
Bra
missed.
320.
So we were quite far for that missile shot, and also head-on shots are quite difficult to do. So now the target, you can see he's actually 450 knot rate of closure. He's turning around, and now I've got the rear aspect. The H should become an R. So let's actually fire from them. So now he's in the range of probable kill still, although he's getting close to the RTR. Now he's in the RTR. Now if I fire the missile, he shouldn't be able to outturn. And that T, waiting for that to become an M. Yep, Pitbull. So now that missile's tracking on its own radar.
Enfield 1-1, Overlord, Bra 333 412 at 16,000.
That's obviously a miss as well. So we'll go for the sidewinder kill. So that's actually all I've got for today. There's not much to add to it. So I really just wanted to emphasize and elaborate what I've said last week about how the missiles work and how the dynamic launch zone, and explain that a little bit. There are guys who do it better. Kraus has a video that in BMS gives a very good breakdown of the numbers, and he obviously memorizes it. And there's a few other YouTubers out there who do flight sim videos who remember it. I only have a very, well, I'm gonna say basic knowledge of the system. So I hope this was helpful in some way and help you guys in the future do a little bit a better BVR and improve that a little bit. But if you take anything away, it's just remember that the missile doesn't fire and forget as people think it does, and it doesn't have as long range as you always think it does. It's always going to be a bit shorter, and it's always going to have to hold that lock just a little bit longer. And keep an eye on the HUD and make sure that you wait for the missile to pitbull before you track another target. You can always fire off all 8 of your AMRAAMs should you so wish. You're just simply not as good as a pilot as the other guy who's going to make sure every missile counts. Alright guys, well look, that's it for me today. If you guys have any questions, or if you think I've got something wrong, put it in the comments. I know I sometimes get things wrong. I'm not 100% on the stuff all the time. This is not what I do for a living. I got other stuff to do, so I do apologize if I get some information wrong. But I will always try and help. So until next time guys, take care. This is Nate out.